The Council of Civilizations had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, a constellation of ancient species who believed wisdom scaled with age and aggression diminished with time. They spoke in tones as slow as the stars turned, wearing their patience like armor. And among them, the mention of Earth was met not with fear or fascination, but with mild irritation, like a distant, noisy child pounding on a locked door. "They are still sending messages," one delegate from the Lutheri Clade muttered during a recent assembly. "Simple frequencies, wrapped in emotional noise. Pointless. Their atmosphere is degrading rapidly," another added. "They won't last another century." Consensus settled like dust. Humanity was too volatile to engage, too self-destructive to save, and too irrelevant to matter. Still, one disagreed. Ambassador Ellerin of the Sithene sat silently in the council chamber, her long-fingered hands folded beneath her sleeves. Her kind did not speak unless it served purpose, and for centuries, that principle had served her well. But something in the raw desperation of human broadcasts, their imperfect math, their frantic pleas, their operas broadcast into the void, clung to her. "They are still trying," she said quietly, her voice cutting across the murmur. Silence answered. Ellerin's assignment came a cycle later. Observation, not contact. She was to monitor Earth's decline and file a final report confirming what all had already decided, that humans were unworthy of the stars. Across the stars, on a planet largely blind to its fate, Dr. Mara Voss stared at a dead satellite feed. Her office at the Los Alamos SETI facility was littered with coffee cups, data pads, and old printouts of radio scans. The walls were plastered with images of constellations and frequency charts. Outside, the desert sun scorched the sand, indifferent as always. "Signal's dead," her assistant said, half apologetic. "It's not dead," she replied. "It's hidden." She pushed away from her desk and stepped toward the cracked screen, fingers flying across a dusty keyboard. The transmission she'd been chasing, an anomalous signature from the dark space beyond Neptune, had cut out midstream. Not a natural signal. Not one of theirs either. It pulsed with patterns too precise, too layered to be chance. It was watching them. She'd known it for weeks. "Patch the auxiliary array. I want full spectrum analysis," she ordered, eyes narrowing. "And get me full access to Project Sigil's black logs." "That's classified," her assistant hesitated. "Then hack it." Mara Voss had spent the better part of her career chasing ghosts in radio static. Every failed attempt at contact, every garbled whisper from the stars, had been a wound she carried beneath sarcasm and caffeine. But this was different. This signal hadn't been reaching out. It had been listening. 2 weeks later, the probe was found. Buried in a high Lagrange orbit, cloaked by gravimetric distortion, the alien observation unit was the size of a compact car and impossibly smooth. No seams, no power signatures, no emissions. Just silence and shadow. Earth's military wanted to dissect it. The politicians wanted to hide it. Mar wanted to speak to it. "Don't be stupid," General Rahim barked during the closed-door briefing. "We don't even know if it's a weapon." "If it were a weapon," Mara snapped, "we'd already be dead." She stared at the thing through the observation window, hovering above the desert airfield like a question no one dared ask. It had eyes, in a way, lenses that rotated slowly, tracking movement, recording everything. For weeks, it said nothing. So Mara spoke first. Using one of SETI's deep-range comm arrays, she fed it data. Human history, music, physics, wars, victories, poetry. Binary packets of chaos and beauty. And still, it said nothing. But one morning, the probe's central lens dilated, just once, then returned to stillness. It was enough. Ellerin watched the transmission logs from her vessel orbiting Jupiter's shadow, the human broadcast flooding through unauthorized channels. She could have deleted them, labeled them interference, followed protocol. Instead, she listened. The human called Mara had a voice sharp as broken glass, but there was precision in her anger and depth beneath her defiance. She spoke not like a diplomat, but like someone who had been ignored too long. There was no polish, no caution, only raw, unyielding presence. "You think we're broken," the message said. Maybe we are. But we're still here. Still reaching. Still building ships out of metal and hope. Ellerin closed her eyes. A choice formed. She encrypted a single file, embedding it deep into a minor council archive, marking Earth as category reassessment pending. No declaration. No open support. Just a seed, planted quietly, where none would notice. Below, Mara Voss sat in the quiet hum of her lab, watching the stars for a sign. Around her, the world stirred, a few whispers in back channels, growing rumors, small truths spreading like sparks in dry grass. Something was coming.
She didn't know what.
But she'd made them listen. That was enough for now. And in the silence that followed, across the cold between stars, the galaxy shifted. Just a little. Not enough to be seen. But enough to begin. The probe blinked. Just once. A shimmer across its lens, too subtle for human eyes, but unmistakable to Mara Voss. She stood alone in the observation chamber, pulse pounding in her throat. For weeks, she'd bombarded the thing with everything from coded prime sequences to Beethoven's Fifth. Now, finally it had reacted. Not spoken, not moved, just that single blink. It was listening. By midnight, she had the array redirected, the old VLA towers sweeping frequencies like spotlights across a night ocean. The team, what remained of it, watched from the control room as the screens lit up with new readings. Mara sat at the center, headset tight against her skull, voice hoarse but steady. Begin transmission. Package Alpha through Delta. Visuals live. She didn't use a prepared message. No carefully drafted speech. No consensus from the brass. What she sent was unsanctioned, unfiltered, human. My name is Dr. Mara Voss. Her voice echoed through vacuum, digitized, fractured, stretched across the dark. I'm a scientist, not a diplomat. But I think you already know that. You've been watching us, judging us. No response. So she kept going. You're not wrong. We've done terrible things. We've burned forests, buried oceans in plastic, dropped bombs on our own cities. We've turned every gift into a weapon. But we've also cured diseases. We've painted ceilings that make strangers weep. We've stood in fire for each other. We build, we destroy, and sometimes we regret. Still silence. She leaned closer to the mic. You think we're beneath you. You might be right, but you don't get to decide who belongs in the stars. The signal was encoded with data packets, art, literature, scientific breakthroughs, street interviews, images of Earth both ravaged and radiant. Her team had called it the mirror. Not a message. A reflection. The next day, the probe vanished. No burst of light, no flare of engines. Just gone. As if it had never been there. By week's end, something new arrived. A ship, not human, not anything seen in terrestrial databases, entered Earth's upper orbit without ceremony. Sleek, obsidian-hulled, with geometry that bent radar. It emitted no weapon signals. No broadcasts. It simply hung in the sky, as if waiting for something. Governments panicked. Nations scrambled jets, called emergency sessions. But before anyone could launch a missile, the ship transmitted a single frequency, one that matched Mara's original message. It was calling her.
She didn't hesitate.
Within hours, Mara stood beneath the hangar's shielded dome, staring up at the vessel's open hatch. Lights glowed softly from within. A breathless technician beside her stammered, "You're not seriously going up there?" "I asked for them to listen," she replied, tightening the straps on her pressure suit. "They're answering." She stepped inside. The interior was cathedral quiet, lit by pulsing blue lines that shifted like veins through metal. No crew. No controls. Only a single platform in the center and a display swirling with symbols. None she recognized, yet somehow understood. It asked a question.
Why?
She answered aloud, instinctively. Because we were never given a chance. The symbols rearranged. Then speak. What followed wasn't conversation. It was connection, mental, emotional, a data-sharing process so immersive it left her sobbing, laughing, breathless. They didn't speak with words. They felt. Her memories flooded into them. Her mother dying in a collapsing hospital during a flood, her first sight of Saturn through a telescope, the raw ache of watching species go extinct. In return, she saw flashes, galactic councils speaking in slow time, massive cities floating in star tides, entire species blossoming and fading like fireflies. And always, always humanity labeled in amber code. Unfit. They were wrong, she whispered. We're not perfect, but we fight to be better. The ship pulsed. The session ended. Mara was returned to Earth with no scars, no implants, no official record. Just one message burned into her mind, clearer than thought.
Prepare.
They're watching. Others will follow. Within a month, the skies changed. Scout ships began to appear, small vessels from species unknown to humanity. Some stayed in high orbit, scanning. Others landed in remote areas, cloaking themselves from satellites. Whispers spread through global intelligence networks. The visitors had arrived, not as conquerors, but as observers. They didn't speak to presidents.
They didn't march into the UN.
They came to people. A blind sculptor in Lagos found a silver-skinned being standing quietly in her garden. A boy in rural India described a creature of light that taught him math through music. An engineer in Rio uploaded plans for a machine he dreamed, and it worked. All of them had one thing in common. They'd watched Mara's message.
The world changed.
Old rivalries froze, not by diplomacy, but by wonder. Nations began collaborating not in secret, but in public. Humanity's first voice, they called Mara now. She hated it. She hadn't spoken for humanity. She'd just spoken loud enough to be heard. In the void between stars, the council stirred. Ambassador Ellerin read the reports in quiet disbelief. What began as a rogue signal had become a movement. Over a dozen lower-tier species had defied protocol and engaged with Earth. And now petitions were being filed, petitions to reassess humanity's standing. She stood in the central chamber of the high spire, her voice measured. They do not come with fleets. They come with questions. That alone should make us listen. You believe they are ready? One elder asked, his voice thick with disdain. I believe they're waking up, Ellerin replied. And that should terrify us. Earth had not been invited. Earth had insisted. And somehow, the galaxy had paused to listen. Back on Earth, Mara Voss stood at the edge of a makeshift landing zone outside Geneva, watching as a second craft descended, sleek, luminous, graceful. A real summit was coming, she knew. Not clandestine encounters, not whispered tests. An answer. And she would be the one to give it. The summit was held on Dallin Prime, a neutral moon suspended in the gravity well of a red giant. It was chosen not for its beauty, though its obsidian cliffs and aurora-filled skies were breathtaking, but for its isolation. No planet claimed it, no species inhabited it. A place with no history, so none could argue over who belonged. Mara Voss arrived as Earth's sole delegate, walking down the landing ramp with the same resolve she had when facing the probe. Her formal uniform itched at the collar, the UN emblem stitched awkwardly beside her personal insignia, a sliver of silver circuit overlaid on a fractal tree. It had become a symbol in the weeks since, the root and the spark, they called it. No entourage. No military escort. Just her. Inside the spire of voices, representatives from dozens of species stood in arranged concentric tiers, floating, breathing, pulsing in rhythms alien and unknowable. The council, ancient and resplendent, watched her descend to the central dais with unreadable expressions. Ambassador Ellerin stood among them, her silhouette wrapped in cascading robes of pale light. She said nothing. Neither did the others. It was Mara who spoke first. You doubted us. The words fell like a hammer. A low murmur rippled across the chamber, some of it laughter, some disdain. One delegate, shaped like a branching sea fan of crystal, hummed in a chorus of overlapping frequencies. You're bold, human, and still very young.
We are, Mara said.
But youth isn't weakness. It's momentum. The dais adjusted beneath her feet, projecting a web of images into the space above her. Earth's history unfolded in brilliant, brutal clarity. Firebombed cities, revolutions, peace marches, moon landings, viral dances, street protests, scientific triumphs, funerals, celebrations. Humanity exposed in its ugliest, most radiant form. "We've made mistakes," she continued, voice clear. "But we made them ourselves. And when we learned with pain. We don't pretend to be wise. We are hungry. For knowledge. For meaning. For connection." The crystalline delegate pulsed again. Many species began that way. But they did not burn their own home. Mara took a breath. "And yet we still live in it." That silenced the chamber. She shifted tone, softer now. "We aren't here to be forgiven. We're here because we never stopped trying. Even when you ignored us. Even when your probes watched our downfall, with clinical detachment. We kept going. That matters." Somewhere in the crowd, a young delegate from the Avalon Quorum rose, folding its translucent wings in quiet respect. "She speaks like one of us." Others followed. The council, ever slow to shift, could not ignore the weight gathering behind her. Delegates from less established species began murmuring in favor of Earth's recognition. They had seen the transmissions. Many had quietly visited Earth and returned changed. Still, the High Elder remained unmoved. "You ask for a seat," the Elder said at last, voice so deep it seemed to stretch time. "But you bring no technology we have not seen, no wisdom we have not already learned. What do you offer us, human, that we cannot already find?" Mara didn't blink. Perspective. The Elder's eyelids closed halfway, the closest thing to interest she had seen in him. "We love despite destruction. We create because we're afraid. We dream because we know how it feels to be small. You stopped being afraid long ago. You forgot what it meant to fight for wonder." A long pause. "We remember." Silence clung to the chamber like smoke. Then the vote began. Each species cast its decision, some in gesture, some in light, some in neural pulses that shimmered above their forms. The council had not added a new voice in over 4,000 years. The process was solemn, even sacred. Elloren's vote came last. She stepped forward, her voice gentle, but firm. "I have watched them longer than most. I watched them destroy and rebuild. And I watched them speak when they had every reason to stay silent. Let this be the first species to rise not because we chose them, but because they chose themselves." Her vote shimmered into the council's web. The tally tipped. Earth was accepted. Not as a ruling power. Not yet. But as an observer, granted access to knowledge, to shared communication, to the beginning of something far greater than itself. The chamber shifted into dispersal. Delegates withdrew, some nodding in acknowledgement, others turning without a word. Earth's ascension would be contested, challenged. But it had happened. The tide had turned. Mara descended the steps slowly, heart still hammering in her chest. She did not smile. Not yet. Outside the spire, beneath a sky of twin suns and stardust winds, Elloren waited. "You're shaking," she said. Mara laughed once, dry and low, terrified. "Good. The brave always are." They stood together in silence, watching as ships blinked out of orbit, returning to corners of the galaxy Mara had only dreamed of. Her world had cracked open. And now all of it, the good, the violent, the magnificent and strange, lay ahead. "We're not ready," Mara admitted. "No species ever is," Elloren replied. "But we're coming anyway." Elloren smiled, a small shift of the lips. "Then perhaps the galaxy will learn to be ready for you." Mara looked up at the sky, so vast, so indifferent, and for the first time in her life, it looked back. And this time, it did not look away. The observer's seat wasn't a throne. It was a data stream, an endless flood of diplomatic packets, linguistic puzzles, and cultural decryptions pouring through the secure uplink wired into Mara Voss's console aboard the Halcyon Relay, Earth's first orbital embassy platform. Built from human ingenuity and salvaged alien fragments, the relay hovered just outside Luna's orbit, glittering like a defiant star. Every day since the summit, Mara sat at that terminal, translating, listening, responding. She was no longer the voice screaming into the void. Now, the void whispered back. But it wasn't praise. It was pressure. The galaxy wasn't united. It was barely a truce. Competing species with eons of blood between them, ancient debts and cold rivalries. Some regarded humanity with curiosity, others with contempt, several with thinly veiled fear. And then there were the remnants. Unknown in origin, the remnants had no seats in the council, no known homeworld. Their ships emerged from deep voids with no warning, their technology impossibly advanced, their motives unreadable. They didn't negotiate. They harvested knowledge, and occasionally civilizations. They were legend, rumor,
Threat.
until they responded. A pulse hit the relay, sharp, deliberate. A non-standard frequency, with no clear structure. It tore through shields, corrupted minor systems, and embedded a message in Earth's observer node. One word, in crystalline formatting.
Why?
Mara stared at the single glyph, breath catching in her throat. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a warning. It was a test. By midnight, Earth's upper command had mobilized everything, AI cryptographers, exolinguists, even poets. But no one could decide how to answer. The question felt elemental, too simple to be safe.
Why?
Why were humans now among the stars? Why were they allowed? Why had the Council, so cautious, so ancient, granted them a voice? So Mara replied the only way she knew how. We refuse to be small. No embellishment. No diplomacy. Just a pulse of stubborn clarity. The remnants replied instantly. This time, it wasn't a message.
It was a ship.
It arrived not in orbit, but in the Pacific, crashing through layers of atmosphere like a spear of light, striking deep into the ocean and vanishing beneath the waves without a ripple. The world braced. Mara was dispatched with a delegation of scientists, linguists, and reluctantly embedded military observers. The location was tracked to the Mariana Trench, a region as alien as any planet. Submersibles were deployed. But it wasn't Mara's sub that found the ship. It found her. In the middle of a deep-sea scan, her vessel lost all propulsion. Lights flickered. A pressure alarm screamed, then silenced. Through the porthole, something moved, fluid, massive, iridescent. Then her comms exploded with light. Not sound, not speech, images. A cascade of visual memories, layered like coral reefs, glimpses of burned cities not her own, twin star systems erupting, species crumbling into silence. Loss without malice. Empires devoured by entropy, not violence. The remnants hadn't come to conquer. They came to witness. To catalog what the galaxy forgot. She understood then. Humanity wasn't being judged for its wars or wonders. It was being evaluated for something else, resilience. The ship's core opened to her. Not physically, but inwardly, through a rush of symbolic exchange. It wanted to know her, and to be known in return. So she gave it everything. Not just her mind, but her scars. The grief of a lost planet she still called home. The absurdity of laughing under a dying sky. The beauty of stubbornness, of building art atop ruins. She showed it the fragility and fury of being human. And it stayed. For 7 hours, they shared. Then, the vessel began to rise. It did not breach with violence, but emerged slowly, casting shimmering shadows across the Pacific dawn. A single panel unfurled like a petal. Mara's sub was lifted silently to the surface. Back on land, the galaxy watched. News feeds lit up across thousands of systems. The remnants had made contact, and not with the Council. With Earth. Within days, envoys arrived. Not hostile, but concerned. What did it want from you? Ellerin asked, her voice calm but strained. She had come personally, against protocol, aboard a Scythene vessel. It wanted to see who we were beyond our machines, Mara said. And what did you show it? Everything we're afraid to admit. Ellerin studied her, quiet for a long moment. The remnants have turned away from entire species before. Locked them out of the archive. When they catalog you, It is not a compliment. It is a verdict. Mara's mouth was dry. I know. Then you understand the risk you've created. I didn't create it, Mara said, more tired than angry. I just stopped hiding it. Word spread across council space. Dozens of emerging civilizations petitioned for humanity's transcripts. Some feared Earth was too volatile to remain in the fold. Others argued that if Earth could be heard, perhaps they could, too. And through it all, the remnants watched. Not with judgment, but with interest. One more message came, this time through the stars. A glyph translated only loosely into 3 words. You are becoming. Mara stood again in the relay's quiet chamber, staring out at the curve of Earth beneath her. The galaxy no longer doubted humanity. Now, it waited to see what they'd become.